Episode 5 of the Last Day series. We're in Matthew chapter 5. I'll read from verse 17 and 18. Verse 17, think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Verse 18, for verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. So that has been interpreted, especially in futuristic eschatology, or futurist eschatology, as in something that still needs to be fulfilled in our day, in our time, or in our near future. So because obviously the cosmology here of heaven and earth, if you see it as a pure physical description of our physical universe, of our space, deep space and earth, then we've experienced a lot of natural disasters, but we haven't seen a global event of cataclysmic destruction of our earth, as well as the stars and the sun and the moon, etc., as is described also in other similar verses like the book of Joel, and Peter refers to it in Acts chapter 2, Peter was referring to the book of Joel, and in the book of Revelation. So the very important thing to understand is that we have a clear concept of the type of literature. Are we dealing with figurative speech, symbolisms, or are we dealing with hyperbole? Are we dealing with literal description of events? Are we dealing with history or poetic descriptions? So this is crucially important. Also, audience relevance and the time texts. Where does it all fit in? And here, assuming that this is talking about our literal universe, then of course one would conclude that this is still to be fulfilled. However, this is typical ancient Hebrew hyperbole, where symbolisms are used, especially cosmological language such as heaven and earth. It can be seen a lot in the book of Isaiah, the book of Ezekiel, where similar types of wording is used. For example, also in the book of Genesis, you'll see Joseph has the dream, and he sees the sun and the moon, and the 12 stars bow down to him. And obviously we know that wasn't the literal sun or the literal moon or stars, but it was referring to his father, his mother, and his 12 brothers, or his 11 brothers, because he was the 12th, the last one. So that type of language is often used and is quite characteristic of the way that the Hebrew people would describe events or foretellings or prophecies, and Jesus is doing the same thing. He is, after all, at that point, he is a Yehudai from the tribe of Judah, although he is also the Son of God. But he uses that kind of language, and it is hugely important that to really comprehend here, he's referring to the temple. You see, the temple in Jerusalem at the time was the second temple that was expanded by the King Herod at the time, and it was a magnificent building. But the way the temple was constructed, it represented the center of the universe for the people of Israel, for the Hebrew people, and where heaven and earth came together. And that's why you see the layout of the outer court, the inner court, and the holy place and the most holy place. These all represent heaven and earth. The most holy place, in fact, represents heaven. Then you get the holy place. I'm not sure where that sits, but then when you go outside of the temple, into the outer court. That would represent earth. And this was common knowledge amongst the Hebrew people then. And so, when we look at it that way and we see the context of it, then we begin to see that actually Jesus is saying that the temple was going to be destroyed, and until that happened, the law would be in place. The law of Moses, which was the Sinaitic Covenant, the contract between Yahweh and the people of Israel, which was set up through the mediator Moses on Mount Sinai, at least 1500 years prior to this talk that Jesus gave. And he is basically saying that he has not come to destroy the law of Moses, but he's come to fulfill it. He's saying that, and many other supporting verses, and I am coming from the assumption that those of you who are interested in this material have knowledge of Scripture, and you will know the verses. The fact that the law of Moses points prophetically towards Christ himself as the fulfillment, and you'll see that verse very clearly in Romans chapter 10 verse 4, the Apostle Paul saying that the end of the law, or in fact the word end there out of the Greek original text means the point aimed at as the limit. The prophetic focus of the law was in fact Christ, the Messiah. And so he says, I haven't come to destroy the Sinaitic Covenant. I haven't come to destroy or replace it, as some people would say, oh, this is replacement theology. It's not. It's pointing the Old Testament covenants, and there are about 5 of them, I believe, that are significantly pointing. You got the Adamic covenant, you've got the Noahic covenant, you've got the Abrahamic covenant, you've got the Davidic covenant, and you've got, of course, the one I'm mentioning, the Sinaitic covenant, and they all point prophetically towards Christ. And when he then appears and comes and is revealed and he fulfills his mission, it is the fulfilling of all those covenants, and it is including also the fulfilling of the Mosaic, the Sinaitic covenant and law of Moses, and all the prophets who spoke of Jesus, of his coming and of what he would do. And so he's fulfilled all of that. He hasn't replaced it, he has fulfilled it, completed it. And then he says, when it's fulfilled, he says, because heaven and earth, the temple, will not pass until all of it is fulfilled. But when it is fulfilled, it will pass. And that becomes clear as you read through the book of Matthew and you end up in chapter 24. He starts talking about what would happen to the temple, and when we get to that point, I'll just close with that now. The disciples asked him, have you seen? I mean, look at this magnificent building. It's so impressive. And I'm sure it was. But then Jesus says, well, the time is coming that none of these will remain standing. And in fact, the translation in the English Bible uses the word stones. No stone will be left upon another. And that's a wrong translation, because in the Greek, again, if you go into the original Greek, it will use the word building. There are to date still stones standing. There's still parts of the wall, as you well know, in Jerusalem. There's still, although albeit smaller parts, left ruins. But there's not one building left standing. And this is what Jesus meant when he said that to the disciples. Not one building, and this temple will not remain standing, because in 70 AD, at the coming of Jesus upon the clouds of judgment, because they broke the Sinaitic Covenant. The covenant was set up between the people of Israel and Yahweh, and that covenant included curses and blessings, and that covenant meant that if you broke it, there was going to be a curse. There was all the consequences are listed in Deuteronomy chapter 28, and that all came to pass. Especially, and that's why God, by the way, put the blood sacrifice in place so they could atone for their sin, so that curse and that judgment would not come upon them. But eventually it did, because they just totally disregarded everything in the end. By the time Jesus came, and then also denied Jesus as the Messiah, which meant that they actually denied the very point, the prophetic point the law of Moses was aiming at, the very purpose for the law, the purpose of the sacrificial system, the purpose of the temple. They were all a foreshadow pointing towards the fulfillment. And when he'd come, and then in the end he was revealed and then rejected, they completely broke the fundamental reason for those for that Sinaitic Covenant, and the judgment was that the people of Israel had fallen into apostasy, and because of that, and it's even worse than that, because they were constantly worshipping Baal. Yeah, Jesus came 70 AD. It took 3.5 years, exactly as was prophesied and foretold by Daniel, by Jesus, and also by John in Revelation. 3.5 years. The city of Jerusalem was surrounded by the Roman armies. They destroyed all of the cities and towns of Judea, and they finally broke through the walls in the month of September 70 AD. They went into the temple grounds, desecrated the holy area as was prophesied, and everything was destroyed. And so that only happened after it was all fulfilled, and his crucifixion, his resurrection, the 37 years, approximately 40 years later, the return of Christ on the clouds of judgment. And when all of that was done, then the temple was destroyed, and with that the temple, the old Sinaitic Covenant, and the old law of Moses was abolished. It was abolished, meaning it was ended, it was fulfilled, not replaced but fulfilled. And so that's a powerful truth. It's not something that we are looking forward to. We're not expecting our universe to collapse or be destroyed. And I know it's all the talks about nuclear wars and this and that, but even still, it wouldn't. A nuclear war would not destroy the sun or make stars fall upon our world. So think about it. It's actually quite a hopeful and good message for me, because to me that means we are called by His grace to build a good world. We have the responsibility in this world to partake of efforts to build a better society. It's never going to be a utopia, but it can be better. A world where there is minimal corruption and crime, a world where there is fairness and truth and love prevails in society, and all people are valued. It can be done, but I believe that one of the big steps towards that means that the church needs to get a full grip of this good news as well. That's a big step, because the last 200 years or so the church has fallen into this dispensationalism or futurist eschatology, and it is very destructive, and it actually has its roots in Illuminati, secret society teachings. They believe that the third temple has to be built, from which their world leader will rise and rule the world. And actually we seem to believe, or not me, but many Christians seem to believe, well, that's going to be the Antichrist, or it could be Jesus in his 1,000-year millennial reign. Well, no, that's not going to happen. But we need to be careful. If we give room to that doctrine too much, remember that we also are given sovereignty and dominion in this world to manifest things. Now, it won't fully manifest, but we could potentially, with the creative power that has been given to us and awarded to us as people in this world, we can manifest certain things, even unknowingly it's happening, and then, oh God, this is a whole different topic. So I'm going to end here now and leave that with you. Oh yes.
For more information, go to reformationgospel.com.